I remember the weight of those grocery bags digging into my forearms as I climbed the stairs, 7 months pregnant, swollen ankles screaming with every step. Alan stood at the top, arms crossed, watching like I was some show to critique. Not once did he move. Not once did he offer help. When I reached the landing, panting and shaking, he smirked and said, "Took you long enough. Maybe next time don't buy so much crap." His friends laughed, and I froze. Something shattered inside me. I didn't say a word in that moment, but my silence was my answer. I wasn't just carrying groceries. I was carrying his child, his household, his pride, and yet, somehow, I was nothing to him. It hit me like a punch I never saw coming. This wasn't just one bad day. This was a pattern, a slow erosion of my worth. And standing there in my own hallway, surrounded by men who laughed at my pain, I realized she cried in silence every day. That she was me. There's a certain kind of betrayal that doesn't need bruises to leave marks. It's when someone sees you struggling, sees your pain, and still chooses to do nothing. That was Alan. His cruelty wasn't loud. It was the kind that slipped between words, that smiled in public and mocked you behind closed doors. He thought I would stay. He thought I didn't have the strength to leave. But deep down, something was changing. Something was waking up. That night, after they all left, I sat on the bathroom floor with my legs stretched out and my belly in my hands. I looked at myself in the mirror and barely recognized the woman staring back. I had become a shadow, his shadow, and I kept thinking, how did I get here? He broke me first, little by little, then made me believe I was the one who was broken. That's the danger of emotional abuse. It wears you down so slowly, you think your exhaustion is your fault. And still, I blamed myself. For being too sensitive, for not speaking up, for crying when he mocked my swollen feet or said I was lazy for needing to nap. But here's the thing, when someone betrays your trust, it's not your softness that failed, it's their heart. He betrayed me in ways that words can't quite capture, and deep down, I knew this wasn't just neglect. This was betrayal in the form of indifference, and indifference is louder than hate. People think betrayal always comes with another woman, but sometimes the betrayal is in how someone watches you drown and doesn't even toss a rope. That night, I didn't sleep. I lay in bed, pretending not to feel the baby kicking as Alan snored beside me. I kept thinking about every moment I let slide, every time I thought maybe tomorrow he'll be better. But the truth came out in his smirk, in his silence, in his friends' laughter, and suddenly, I couldn't unsee it. The next morning, I did something small but different. I made breakfast and left his plate in the microwave, not on the table. He asked why. I just said, I figured you could get it yourself. That's it. And oh, how that small act made him snap. He called me ungrateful, said I was starting to act crazy. That word, crazy, women hear it too often when they start standing up. But I stayed quiet because she planned it all, and he never saw it coming. Looking back, that moment on the stairs wasn't the worst thing he ever did, but it was the clearest. A line drawn in the sand. It exposed who he really was, stripped of charm and excuses. That's the thing about stories of betrayal. They're rarely sudden. They unfold like slow poison, and by the time you realize what's happening, you're already on your knees. But I was done crawling. I was ready to rise, even if it started with one shaky step. Nobody believed her. Those words played on a loop in my mind. Nobody believed the version of me who used to cry in the shower, the one who made excuses for him, to friends, to family, to myself. But that version of me, she was done lying. She was done waiting. I was done. My silence would no longer be submission. It would be strategy. Because while he thought he still had control, I was already rebuilding. What happened on that staircase was just the spark. But oh, what a fire it lit inside me. And as I walked into the bathroom that night to shower, I felt something unfamiliar. Clarity. Cold, honest clarity. The kind that doesn't scream. The kind that whispers, you already know what to do. And what came next? Well, let's just say the old me didn't survive that shower. It was in the shower, of all places, that everything finally hit me. The water was warm, but I felt cold inside. I stood there, staring at the tiled wall, as my mind started playing scenes like a highlight reel of every moment I'd ignored, every insult I'd brushed off. I thought I was strong for enduring, for staying silent, for not overreacting. But standing there, belly round and heavy, I realized she cried in silence because she believed that's what love demanded. I used to think I was overthinking, that maybe I was too emotional, too hormonal. That's what he told me after all. You're imagining things. You're being dramatic. You're lucky I'm still here. But that morning something cracked. I saw myself from the outside, a woman alone in her own marriage, a woman who carried groceries, burdens, and guilt, while he carried nothing. I was nothing to him, and somehow I kept fighting to be seen. Why? Gaslighting is quiet. It doesn't yell, it whispers. It distorts your reality until you're second-guessing your own instincts. I started remembering how often I apologized for things I didn't do, how I'd ask permission to rest, how I tiptoed around his moods like I was the one doing something wrong. But guess what? The truth came out, piece by piece. I wasn't crazy. I was captured in a cage of manipulation, and I didn't even realize the door was unlocked. That's what betrayal feels like. It's not always an affair or a dramatic exit. Sometimes it's the quiet dismissal of your needs, the way someone stops caring, and worse, pretends like they still do. He betrayed me when he saw me sobbing and walked away. He betrayed me when he let me carry everything while he joked with his friends. I was deceived into believing that survival was love, that endurance was affection, and that was my awakening. I stood there, hands on my belly, and whispered, "You deserve better," not just to my unborn daughter, but to myself. I knew that if I stayed, my silence would become her script. She would learn to love like this, and I couldn't bear the thought of her repeating my story. I had to break the cycle, even if it scared me, even if it meant walking away with nothing but my name and my child. He thought I would stay, but not anymore. What they don't tell you about waking up emotionally is that it hurts before it heals. It's like pulling the plug on a fantasy you've been clinging to. The version of him I built in my head, the one who'd change, who'd grow, who'd suddenly realize my worth. He never existed. He never saw it coming because he never thought I'd see him for who he really was. But I did. And once you see the truth, you can't unsee it. That night, I journaled, just a few lines. He broke me first, so I showed him the proof of what he's become. It wasn't evidence I was gathering yet. It was clarity. But clarity is a kind of proof too. I didn't know my next step, but I knew this. I would no longer shrink to fit his comfort. My silence would no longer protect him. My silence would protect me. My silence would be my answer. She planned it all. The future me, the stronger me, the version of me that had already started forming in that steam-filled bathroom. She was coming, slowly, steadily, and he was losing me, even if he didn't realize it yet. Because while he was still mocking, still lounging, still blind, in his arrogance, I was awakening. I was reclaiming the parts of me that he tried to erase. Nobody believed her when she said she was suffering. They saw the Instagram smiles, the baby bump updates, the couple's dinners, but they didn't see the nights I cried into my pillow while he played video games. They didn't hear the words he whispered when no one was around. But I believed her. I believed myself. And that was the moment everything started to shift. Revenge? No, that wasn't what I wanted. But freedom? Oh, I craved it like air. I didn't want to destroy him. I wanted to rebuild me. And it started that very night, with a clean towel, damp hair, and a quiet decision. Tomorrow I'd take the first step, even if it was small, even if it was invisible to him, because the most powerful moves often start with no announcement. I didn't even take a suitcase, just a duffel bag with some clothes, my prenatal vitamins, and Lily's ultrasound pictures. I didn't cry, not because I wasn't hurting, but because I had cried so many times before that my body simply refused. The silence in the cab felt louder than the shouting I'd gotten used to. I wasn't running away. I was walking towards something, anything, that felt like peace. I stared out the window, trying not to think about the groceries I'd left on the kitchen counter. He thought I would stay, but I didn't. Not this time. When I reached the hotel, I hesitated before going in. The lobby smelled like lavender and lemon, and it felt like the first clean breath I'd taken in years. The woman at the desk didn't look at me with pity, just professionalism. That tiny act of normalcy made me want to collapse. I gave her a fake name, paid cash. I was scared, sure, but also oddly calm, like something in me had clicked. She handed me the key and said, "Room 214, elevators to your left." My silence was my answer to the storm I'd left behind. Anne showed up 2 hours later with snacks, a phone charger, and the kind of hug that says, "I've got you." She didn't say much at first, just sat next to me on the bed and let me breathe. When I told her everything, how he mocked me, how I was nothing to him, how I found the strength to walk away, she didn't look shocked. Turns out she'd seen the cracks too. "You cried in silence for so long," she said, "but not anymore." I needed that. Someone who didn't question my pain, just acknowledged it. The next morning, he texted, not asking if I was okay, not asking about the baby. His exact words were, "Did you leave the leftovers out? They'll go bad." I stared at the screen, blinking. That was the moment I realized. He never saw me. I was just convenience, background noise. And even now, he thought I'd just pop back in, pick up where we left off. He truly never saw it coming, that I'd leave, that I'd really leave. I took a shower in the hotel that morning and let the water run cold. I wanted to feel something. Real. Every droplet that hit my skin washed away one more layer of the lies I'd believed, that I was overreacting, that I had no right to feel tired, that I should be grateful. He broke me first, and for a while, I thought maybe I deserved it. But as the steam faded, so did the guilt. For the first time, I didn't feel guilty for choosing me. Anne brought me my mail the next day, and in that stack, I found the credit card bill, my name, charges I didn't recognize, restaurants, electronics, even lingerie, none of it mine. That's when it hit me. I was deceived. This wasn't just emotional betrayal. This was financial, strategic. He planned it all. While I was carrying his child and climbing stairs with groceries, he was spending my name. And no one knew, because nobody believed her, the good wife, the quiet one. I started writing things down, dates, receipts, conversations. Anne helped me sort it all. This could help you later, she said, and I knew she was right. It wasn't just about leaving anymore. It was about protecting myself and my daughter. Betrayal wasn't just a feeling anymore. It had a paper trail. I felt like a detective in my own life, uncovering the secrets I hadn't even realized were there. The truth came out slowly, painfully, piece by piece. Even in the hotel room, I couldn't sleep. I'd lie on my side, one hand on my belly, whispering to Lily, telling her we'd be okay, promising her something better. She deserved better. I deserved better. That was my nightly prayer. And every night, it got a little easier to believe it, that this wasn't the end of me. It was the beginning of something else. Something I hadn't even named yet. He tried calling a few times. I didn't answer. Not out of pettiness, but because I didn't owe him anything, not even words. My silence was my answer. Let him wonder. Let him stew in the vacuum of control he no longer had. It wasn't revenge. Not yet. But it was the first taste of power I'd felt in months. And oh, how I clung to it. Because deep down, I knew this wasn't over. Leaving was just the first crack in the foundation. What came next would require strategy, strength, and silence. And I was ready for all three. The hardest part wasn't leaving. It was pretending like I hadn't already left. I moved back into the house for a week, just long enough to gather what I needed, smiled when he came home, cooked dinner, laughed at his stupid jokes. Every move I made was calculated, down to the way I folded the laundry. He thought I would stay. He really believed that after everything, I'd crawl back and beg for scraps. But I was done begging. I was gathering ammunition, quietly, carefully, strategically. I started taking pictures of everything, bank statements, credit card bills, even the car title. I found drawers full of unopened mail, legal notices, and transactions that made my blood run cold. I found the messages too, texts to women saved under fake names. I was nothing to him, just someone to keep the lights on and the food warm. So I showed him the proof. Well, not to his face. Not yet. But I kept copies, screenshots, dates. It was all going into a folder titled Freedom. I met with a lawyer in secret. Anne watched the door while I explained my situation. I was scared, mostly because I didn't even know half of what I didn't know. Turns out he'd taken out a credit card in my name without telling me. Maxed it out. Missed payments. My credit score was tanked. He betrayed me. The lawyer didn't flinch. "We'll fix it," she said. I believed her. For the first time in years, I felt like I had someone in my corner who wasn't emotionally invested, just legally sharp. From there, every day became a mission. I opened a new bank account in my name only, rerouted my paycheck, switched my phone to a prepaid burner. I was living a double life, one where I smiled over breakfast, and another where I was documenting betrayal. She planned it all, every detail, and no one knew. He mocked my pregnancy brain, but oh, if only he knew how laser-focused I'd become. My mind had never been clearer. I contacted a credit monitoring service, locked down my accounts, froze my credit, got copies of everything he ever touched financially. This man was reckless with money, but meticulous in how he covered his tracks. It was like peeling back wallpaper and finding mold. Every layer revealed something rotten. I was deceived, again and again, but not anymore. This time, I wasn't looking away. I was staring it down, naming it, documenting it, preparing for it. One afternoon, I caught him on the phone whispering in the garage. I didn't even need to hear the words. I just knew. I felt it in my gut. That old ache, that betrayal that slithered into my bones. But I didn't confront him. Not yet. I needed timing, leverage. Revenge without strategy is just chaos. And I wasn't about to be messy. My silence was my answer. That was my edge. He had no idea what was coming. He never saw it coming. Meanwhile, I started slowly moving things. Out. A coat here. A file there. My journals. Lily's baby clothes. Stuff he wouldn't notice right away. I rented a small storage unit under a different name. It was tucked behind a gas station on the edge of town. Nothing fancy, but it was mine. I'd sit there sometimes alone in the dim light, just breathing. Knowing each box I stacked meant I was one step closer to freedom. I also kept a notebook. Not digital, physical. In it, I wrote everything: dates, feelings, suspicious activity. Every time he yelled, every time he guilt-tripped me, every time he made me feel like nothing. That book became my Bible, my protection, my weapon. And if one day I had to explain why I left, why I stayed so long, or why I couldn't go back, that notebook would speak for me. I even started looking at apartments, quietly, during my lunch breaks. Nothing glamorous, just safe, clean, somewhere. Lily and I could start over. One place had a tiny balcony. I stood there for 10 minutes just imagining what it would feel like to sip tea in peace. No shouting, no slamming doors, just air, just dignity. It was close enough to a park and a grocery store, enough to build a new rhythm, a life that was ours. And I knew, soon, it would all come together. All the pieces I was collecting weren't just evidence, they were stepping stones. I wasn't just preparing to leave, I was preparing to win. And next came the part where I turned silence into power. Living a double life wasn't glamorous, it was exhausting. I'd wake up next to him, force a half smile, and then spend the day quietly building a life he wouldn't be part of. I had to move like a ghost, unnoticed, careful. I'd rehearse excuses in my head. I'm meeting Anne. Work needs me late. The doctor changed the appointment. Lies, yes, but survival ones. She planned it all. Every move had to be flawless. I wasn't running, I was repositioning. The apartment lease was the first major step. A 1-bedroom, 3rd floor, no elevator. Funny how that didn't scare me. I'd already carried the weight of this marriage on my back for years. What were a few stairs compared to that? I paid the deposit in cash, picked up the keys while he was watching a game. My hands were shaking, but not from fear, from power, the kind of trembling that comes when you realize you're taking your life back. I kept the apartment. Didn't tell Anne, didn't tell anyone. I furnished it little by little, a futon, a lamp from a thrift store, a baby blanket draped over a hand-me-down crib. It wasn't much, but it was ours. I started calling it the escape hatch. I'd sit there sometimes with takeout, in total silence, and just breathe. For the first time, I could hear myself think. No accusations, no mocking, just stillness. Every day, I took small pieces of my life out of the house, jewelry I'd inherited from my grandma, medical files, Lily's ultrasounds, my favorite books, things that wouldn't ring alarms if they disappeared slowly. He barely noticed me, let alone what I was carrying in my bag. I moved like mist, slipping through his reality unnoticed. And still, he thought I would stay, that I'd always be his punching bag, that his betrayal didn't matter. The burner phone was Anne's idea. Text me from this. Keep yours clean, she said, sliding it across the table one morning. We spoke in code after that. Our version of spy games. Did you water the cactus? Meant, is everything still on track? A shared language, one born from necessity, from fear, from knowing nobody believed her the first time she tried to speak. This time I'd make sure my voice wasn't just heard, it was documented. I also created a new email, one with no links to our shared life. I used it to job hunt, apply for assistance, and build a digital world where his name didn't exist. It felt strange, building this shadow version of myself, but it was also liberating. I was no longer waiting to be rescued. I was rescuing myself, one password reset at a time, one secret click at a time. At night, when he'd fall asleep on the couch, snoring with a beer still in his hand, I'd sit at the kitchen table and plan. Spreadsheets, budgeting, legal folders. I knew the day would come when I'd need to execute everything flawlessly. Timing was key. Too soon, and I'd be vulnerable. Too late, and I'd lose my edge. He never saw it coming. He didn't even know I had it in me, but he broke me first. What choice did I have? And the more I planned, the worse he got. It was like he could feel the power shift, even if he couldn't name it. He mocked my paranoia, laughed at my mood swings, blamed everything on the pregnancy. And still, my silence was my answer. I let him think he was winning. I let him laugh, because the louder he got, the quieter I became. And in that quiet, I rebuilt. One night, he accused me of being distant, said I wasn't present as a wife. The irony almost choked me. I was nothing to him, until I wasn't at his service, until I stopped reacting. That night, I looked at him and just nodded. Maybe I'm tired, I said. Oh, if he only knew. Tired? I was exhausted from carrying this facade, this survival system. But that fatigue was temporary. Revenge was coming. Because soon, very soon, I'd press the button. I'd flip the switch. I wasn't waiting for a perfect moment. I was building one. And the day it all aligned, that was when everything would change. I remember standing in the kitchen, clutching my lower back, swollen feet aching, while Alan barked orders from the couch. His friends were over, again, and even though I was 8 months pregnant, he asked if I could be a dear, and serve them drinks. Not a thank you, not a smile, just expectation. I shuffled to the fridge, holding back tears. He thought I would stay. That was his first mistake. That night, something inside me cracked. He laughed when I winced from a contraction, called it practice pain. His buddies chuckled too, like it was some inside joke, but it wasn't funny. It was humiliating. I excused myself, waddled to the bathroom, and just sat on the floor. The tile was cold. My breath was shaky. She cried in silence, and I hated that I had to pretend I was okay just to survive another evening in that house. Alan started making these sly comments, telling people I was emotional or lazy because I didn't want to be intimate every night. My body was stretched beyond capacity. My bones ached, but none of that mattered to him. He said if I didn't fulfill my duties, maybe someone else would. I was deceived, not just by his words, but by the man I once thought I'd grow old with. That man, he was long gone. One night, after I refused him, he slammed the bedroom door so hard the wall cracked. He didn't speak to me for 2 days, not because he was hurt, but because he was punishing me. Silent treatment used to break me. Now, it just gave me space to think. My silence was my answer, and in that silence, my plan grew sharper. His cruelty no longer caught me off guard. It confirmed I was doing the right thing. He didn't even pretend to care anymore. If I cried, he'd roll his eyes. If I needed help, he'd ask if I was trying to be dramatic. He broke me first, and now he was mocking the ruins. One afternoon, I found his search history, guides on reigniting intimacy during pregnancy, but I also found the messages, flirty texts, late-night photos, names I didn't recognize, and worst of all, he told one of them I was boring. Now, that night, I served dinner with a smile, played the role. I watched him eat and laugh like nothing had changed. But she planned it all. Every word I said was calculated, every move deliberate. I was feeding the monster for the last time, and he had no idea I was already gone, already living a half-life somewhere he couldn't touch me. He still believed his mask worked, but the truth came out, at least to me. The worst part? He started involving others in the disrespect. He'd invite people over without telling me, then mock me for not being presentable. Once he told his sister I was letting myself go while I stood in the room. I didn't respond, just looked her in the eye. She looked away. Nobody believed her, because it was easier to pretend the bruises were metaphors than admit he was cruel. He once told me, pregnancy doesn't make you special. Every animal can do it. And just like that, he exposed himself. Not to the world, but to me. I saw him clearly. Entitled, cold, small. The pedestal I'd built for him cracked beneath the weight of his own arrogance. I wasn't just disappointed. I was done. And the revenge wasn't going to be loud. It would be meticulous. I started journaling again, writing down everything. Dates, comments, patterns. I printed out screenshots, made copies of receipts, and stored everything in a binder at the apartment. I called it the truth file, because one day when he asked why, I'd be ready. I wouldn't yell, I wouldn't argue, I'd just show him the proof, and he would finally understand what betrayal feels like. And as I sat in bed that night, hand resting on my belly, I whispered to my daughter, "We're almost out." I felt her kick, strong, sure. She wasn't just growing inside me, she was fueling me, and soon, the world Alan thought he controlled would collapse around him. He never saw it coming. I woke up before sunrise. My bag was already packed, zipped tight, hidden behind the linen closet door. My heart thudded so hard I swore it echoed. That morning felt surreal, like watching myself from the outside. I moved slowly, deliberately, like someone walking through fog. She planned it all. Every phone call, every document, every tear I swallowed. It was all leading to this. Anne waited 2 blocks away in her car. We used code words when texting. Let's get coffee, meant it was go time. Rory, Alan's brother, had quietly agreed to help too. He'd seen enough. Said he was tired of enabling Alan's behavior. I almost didn't believe him, but the truth came out. Not everyone in that family was blind. He helped distract Alan by inviting him to a fishing trip that morning. That gave us 3 hours. I moved like a ghost through that house, gathering only what mattered. Baby clothes, important files, my laptop and the binder, the one with all the proof. I didn't cry. I didn't hesitate. I just kept repeating one line in my head. He broke me first. And if I ever forgot that, I'd flip through the pages of lies and betrayal I'd collected. My pain had purpose now. There was something haunting about folding baby blankets while listening to birds outside, like a funeral for the life I thought I had. I was deceived into thinking love looked like endurance, like patience, like staying quiet, but no more. My silence was my answer long enough. Now, action would speak for me, and it would speak loudly. I left the ring on the kitchen table, right next to the keys and the divorce papers. But I didn't just drop them there. I highlighted the sections outlining the fraud, the manipulation, and the financial evidence. So I showed him the proof. I wanted him to know I didn't just walk. I walked away informed. He couldn't twist the story this time. We loaded the car in under 30 minutes. Anne cried. I didn't. I was too focused. She kept saying how proud she was of me, how strong I was. I didn't feel strong. I felt hollow. But maybe strength isn't a feeling. It's just showing up, even when your knees are shaking. That day, I showed up for myself, for my daughter, for the version of me who thought I was nothing to him. Before we drove off, I took one last look at the house. I wasn't sad to leave. I was relieved. That place had become a prison dressed up as a home, and now I was free. He never saw it coming. And when he walked in and saw the emptiness, the missing bags, the truth staring at him from the kitchen table, I hope he understood what it felt like to be left behind. Later that day, I blocked his number, but not before he texted, "Where are you? You didn't even make breakfast." That was his reaction. Not fear, not concern, not love, just annoyance. He thought I would stay, and that's when I knew I'd made the right choice. He didn't deserve a goodbye. He deserved consequences. I moved into the tiny apartment with barely enough furniture, but I slept better that night than I had in months. No footsteps pounding toward the door, no sighs of disappointment, just silence and peace. She finally left, and this time, there was no turning back. I wasn't just escaping, I was rebuilding, and as I unpacked the last box, I found a photo of us on our wedding day. I almost tossed it, but something stopped me. I stared at that version of me, hopeful, naive, glowing, and whispered, "You made it." Because the woman in that photo had no idea what was coming, but she survived, and now, it was time to face whatever came next, starting with his reaction. The moment Alan realized I was gone, his texts came flooding in. First confusion, then rage, then guilt trips. "You're overreacting. This is unfair to me. I didn't do anything wrong." It was classic. He thought I would stay, even after everything. He really believed I'd just keep dragging my swollen feet through 3 flights of stairs, carrying bags and pain in silence. But this time, my silence was my answer. He tried calling nonstop for 2 days. When I didn't respond, he switched tactics, sent flowers to my sister's house, wrote a letter full of regret and misunderstanding. But not once did he mention our daughter. Not once did he ask how I was coping. It was all about him. He begged her to come back, not because he missed me, but because he lost control. Then came the weaponized sympathy. His mother called crying, saying Alan was devastated. I almost felt bad until she slipped and asked if I had any proof of the fraud. That's when I knew he was spinning his own story. I calmly emailed her a copy of the credit card statements and lawyer's summary. So I showed him the proof, not just to him, but to anyone who dared question my decision. The next day, she called again, different tone, apologized, said she didn't know. I believed her, sort of. It didn't matter though. The truth came out, and once it did, even his oldest friends reached out to say they were glad I finally left. That stunned me. Apparently, nobody believed her when she first whispered about his temper. But now they admitted they'd seen the red flags. He posted vague statuses online. Things like, "Some people are ungrateful," or "Truth always comes out." Oh, the irony. I wanted to reply so badly. I didn't. My silence was my answer, but a part of me chuckled knowing his mask was cracking, and he couldn't control the narrative anymore. She exposed him in the only way that mattered, by walking away and staying gone. His friends stopped visiting him. Even Rory cut ties after hearing the full story. One by one, the walls he built with lies started to collapse. He thought he could manipulate everyone, but he never saw it coming. That quiet strength could echo louder than any scream. People began to question what else he'd been hiding. I wasn't interested in revenge. Not really. I just wanted peace. But I'll be honest, watching his story fall apart was a kind of justice. Stories of betrayal don't always end with fire and fury. Sometimes they end in paperwork and silence. And that's exactly what he couldn't handle. I didn't give him the dramatic showdown he expected. I gave him nothing. Still, I had to be on guard. He tried twisting things through mutual contacts. "She's hormonal. She's unstable." I documented everything. Emails, texts, voice messages. I wasn't just healing. I was preparing for court, for custody, for every possible deflection. He betrayed me. And now, he'd face the consequences of thinking I'd never have the courage to stand up. Every time I felt tempted to respond, to defend myself, I reminded myself, he broke me first. And when someone breaks you without blinking, you owe them nothing. Not your voice, not your energy, not even your tears. She cried in silence for too long, and now, the silence was mine to wield. It was power, and I was learning to use it. But even as I blocked numbers and filtered emails, I knew this wasn't over yet. There was still court, still custody, still my daughter's future to protect. And if I'd come this far, there was no way I'd stop now, because the next step wasn't just survival, it was winning. I didn't think it would feel this quiet, not just in the room, but in my soul. After all the noise, the yelling, the walking on eggshells, silence felt strange. At first, it was almost too still. I'd wake up waiting for a sarcastic comment or a cold shoulder, but it never came. Just the sound of my baby girl breathing next to me. And that was peace. She finally left, and this time she stayed gone. When Lily was born, I held her and cried, not out of fear or regret, but because I finally felt like I could breathe. He thought I would stay, even as I pushed her into this world without him. But I didn't need him in that room. I needed strength, and I had it. I had it all along. He just tried so hard to convince me otherwise. There's something about holding a child that resets everything. Suddenly, the petty arguments, the financial betrayal, the nights I cried in silence, they all became fuel. I looked at Lily and thought, you will never question your worth because of a man. That promise became my new North Star. It lit a fire in me I didn't know I still had. I used the settlement money to book us a little beach trip. Nothing fancy, just a small rental near the coast. The salt in the air, the wind in our hair. It felt like I was washing him off me. As I stood there, baby in one arm and my other hand on my still soft belly, I smiled. My body had changed, sure, but it had carried life. It had carried betrayal and still stood tall. That was beautiful. People say revenge is best served cold. I say it's best served as peace. Peace he'll never touch. Peace he never saw coming. Because this isn't just my story of pain, it's my story of rebuilding. I was deceived, yes, but now I'm finally free. And freedom doesn't need an audience. It just needs space to breathe. At night, when Lily sleeps against my chest, I sometimes whisper things I wish I'd heard. You're safe now. You don't have to earn love. Your worth isn't up for debate. Those words aren't just for her. They're for me too. Every whisper heals the girl I used to be. The one who thought being tired and unloved was normal. The one who forgot she had a voice. I decorated our tiny apartment with secondhand treasures and hand-painted quotes on the wall. One reads, "My silence was my answer." Another says, "She planned it all." Because I did. I got us here. I turned rock bottom into foundation. Every piece of this new life, it's proof that revenge doesn't have to look like rage. It can look like a woman rebuilding with grace. Sometimes people ask how I got over it. I didn't. I just moved forward. I stopped giving my energy to questions like, why would he treat me like that? The answer doesn't matter anymore. What matters is that she exposed him. Not with drama, but with distance. Not with shouting, but with growth. I outgrew the cage he tried to build around me. One morning, I caught Lily babbling at her reflection, all chubby cheeks and curious eyes, and I realized this is what healing looks like. It's not always dramatic. Sometimes it's just coffee on the balcony, baby laughter, and bills paid on time. It's small wins stacking up like bricks. It's finding joy and simplicity again. But even in this piece, I knew there was one last step. One more door to walk through. Legal closure, custody, protection. I'd survived the emotional war, but now I had to secure the battlefield to make sure Lily and I were safe for good. And that was coming next. It wasn't just the legal papers. It wasn't just the court hearings or the constant back and forth between lawyers. It was the weight lifting off my shoulders. For the first time in forever, I felt like I could exhale. The divorce papers had been signed. The custody agreement was in place. And the thing I never thought would happen, he begged her to come back, was nothing but an echo of his desperation. It didn't matter anymore. We fought. We fought like hell, and it was hard. My heart ached watching Lily grow up in this divided world, where he barely even saw her. But the truth was clear. He betrayed me, and I wasn't going to let him do it to our daughter, too. So I held my ground, even when the emotional manipulation came, even when he tried to twist the truth. The first few months, I kept wondering when the other shoe would drop. When would he show up with more lies? More manipulation. But each time it was the same. He never saw it coming. He didn't expect me to stand tall. He didn't expect me to fight with the same ferocity I once gave him. But I did, and it changed everything. I got used to the idea of being alone, and it didn't feel like loneliness anymore. It felt like freedom. Every morning was mine. Every choice was mine. Every moment I spent with Lily was a chance to mold her into the strong woman she would one day become. I found the messages, but more importantly, I found myself again, strong, wise, and ready to take on whatever was next. When I realized how much my heart had healed, I started seeing the little things again. The smile Lily gave me when I helped. Her with her first school project. The way she ran into my arms after a long day. These were the moments that told me I had made the right choice. These were the moments that proved revenge wasn't just about getting back at him. It was about getting back to me. I became financially independent. The alimony didn't come close to covering everything, but I made it work. I wasn't living in fear of what might happen. I had rebuilt, and for the first time, I could see the future clearly. It wasn't clouded with what he did to me. It was wide open, filled with opportunity, hope, and strength. Every legal win felt like a victory over the past. Every small triumph was a declaration that I was done being the victim of someone else's lies. I wasn't going to wait for his approval anymore. I wasn't going to hope for his change. He had his chance, and he blew it. And then, one day, as I signed the last piece of paperwork, I realized something. This wasn't just about custody or alimony. This was about peace. This was about me finally standing in my power and owning my choices. It was about letting go of the story he tried to write for me and deciding I would write my own. I started dreaming again. Not big dreams, small ones. A new job maybe, a little vacation with Lily, more family dinners. But the point was, they were my dreams, not the ones dictated by someone who never cared about me. And when I thought about the life ahead, I knew something for sure. I had earned every moment of this peace. And here's the thing. Sometimes we get so caught up in the fight, in the anger, in the revenge, that we forget how beautiful life can be when we simply stop letting someone else define us. I stopped waiting for him to change. I planned it all, and in doing that, I got everything I needed.